Good evening. This is actually truly an honor. Don and I have been friends for 10 years now, or longer. Feels like a lot longer, but we've been together. He actually helped me with my startup. When I brought it to Columbia, couldn't find the right space, and I met Don within 45 seconds, because you're going to hear how good of an entrepreneur he is. He spotted it, said, "So you're doing this?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Where's your office?" I said, "I don't know yet." He said, "I know, come with me." And he took me to the top floor, third floor of his building. Half the floor, he said, "This is yours if you want it." For 8 months we were together. He coached me as a mentor to me. He also let us have, as a good startup, he let us have the space for free. Don't try to get anything from him, guys. I was special. But because he liked the technology. So don't think that leads to a lot of questions after this for free things. But we actually built a relationship from that, and we've been together ever since. And I was blessed enough that he, 3 or 4 years ago, he asked me to help with the incubator, and that's kind of where we are today after I exited my company. So it's truly an honor. He does so much for our city that we don't know about. We honored him last night at the incubator award. We got $1.9 million from Economic Development Administration. We're real proud of that, to build a new incubator. Thank you, Amy. The other honor at the very end of the session was the incubator is going to be on Catawba Street, which is near FCRA at the end, and the city, myself with Mayor Steve Benjamin, renamed Catawba to Don Tomlin Way in honor of Don, and his does so much for entrepreneurs in Columbia. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I was overwhelmed at that gift of naming a street after me. It was more than I deserved, even after 15 years of doing this.
But before we really get into it, I'll let Don is going to take you through his career, and very successful career of acquisitions, workouts, and really the epitome of doing startups from the very beginning, or buying companies and building them up and selling them. Before we start, the most important thing is for Don to define what an entrepreneur is in his mind. So, definition of an entrepreneur?
Well, an entrepreneur is a guy or gal that can't see walls. If you're really brilliantly analytical and you can analyze all those walls that are in front of you that you have to climb over, you might not make it. If you're not that brilliant and you are very energetic and you focus on the here and now and not the long-range planning, and don't let a wall stand in front of you, don't even recognize the wall, just go towards it and keep charging ahead, and somehow you get either over it or blow it down as you go about building your business. So an entrepreneur to me is very simple. It's a person that cannot see the walls, the impediments, the impossibilities, the negative cash flow, all of the things that we tell folks today to do good business planning, have that cash flow planned out forever. Well, an entrepreneur just can't see some of those walls.
Anyone who's started, sold, or in the middle of a company, you completely understand the pressure of your day-to-day grind, finding good investors that can help you versus just give you money. All those things are part of running a company or starting a company. So Don, you didn't start out as super successful. You live here in Columbia, grew up here in Columbia. When in your world did you say, you know what, I need to be an entrepreneur, I need to start something?
My children today are very overscheduled. They're overscheduled in the summer, they're overscheduled in the winter, which is a good thing. When I grew up, there was no schedule. You read books, you played in the yard, and the summer was boring. I took that until I was 13, and I couldn't stand it anymore. And I went to the only place I could work at 13 was a farm. So I picked peaches and poured peaches on a conveyor belt at 20 cents an hour. And then I had more money than my friends had, so that was a big event for me. And then after a summer of doing that, I said, I'm not doing this next year. And so I started a small business doing, we poured concrete, we built some walls, we built some little home additions in a basement, and that was the next summer. And
so it all started about 13, 14.
13.
And you quickly learned you don't want to pick peaches for a living. so I can use the work ethic to do other things with that.
Right. I enjoyed work. I enjoyed the activity. I must say that the peach picking was not intellectual stimulation, but you learned about the coworkers and the mean boss. It wasn't a mean boss. And you know that you really want to do something more the next year. So the next year, I had 3 of my friends working for me, doing stuff with me. And then the 16th year, I was an apprentice electrician, having talked Gregory Electric Company into putting me in a truck on Monday, and I came home on Friday and learned how to wire heavy electrical stuff in telephone buildings, and that was incredible. And then they sent me to Charleston in my 17th year. So, and then I worked during the year. So I worked by choice and enjoyed making money.
So work ethics is one of the key, the drive. To be
Easily bored.
Easily bored is a good
As much
entrepreneur.
of a motivator as anything.
And a little ADD to go with it, a little bit. So through college, can you take us through your college and then your military experience and then from there?
Went to University of South Carolina, a year in engineering. Then I started dreaming about business, switched to the business school. I wouldn't trade anything for my year in engineering. It was a good basic education. And then I was very fortunate to have some professors that were amazing. Had they called it personnel back then, it's HR now. I had a professor that was the head of personnel for the Pennsylvania Railroad. That was one of the biggest personnel or HR jobs in America. I listened to him. I had another professor that literally wrote the textbook on insurance, gave a quiz at every day. But out of that, I learned all the insurance terminology, so that was invaluable later on in life. Had another guy that just did very late, gone to Harvard. He brought all his cases back, and he made us do all the cases in one semester. We were groups of 6 just working till midnight, night after night. So I had some great opportunities, and one of my professors would sneak me into lectures that executives paid hundreds of dollars, $1,000 to go to. And one of those was a fellow named Guy Ford, who was the vice president of industrial relations, a new word for HR, at the Gillette Company in Boston. I'd never been on a plane, so I went up to him after the seminar and said, "Any way you get a summer job at Gillette?" And he said, I said, "I'd like to send you my resume." He said, "Send it." So I had a little resume by then. They sent me a ticket to fly to Boston for interviews. And that was very, very an incredible experience of being interviewing 7 department heads until one of them picked me. And I had an awesome job there in the summer.
And when you graduated from college?
Graduated from college, went in the U.S. Navy. When I was a junior, I went to the Pentagon with a resume, walked in, said, "I'm here to see about a job. I'm going to be commissioned in NROTC." Guy said, "Well, you're in the wrong building. You need the Navy Annex." That was a little humiliating. I straightened up my 3-piece suit and went over to the Navy Annex. Luckily, they have really smart guys at the front desk. Pulled out my resume, showed it to the guy at the front desk, and he made a phone call, and I introduced me to a fellow I knew as Doug Madison, because they didn't wear uniforms back during the Carter administration. Guy looked at my resume. At that point, I was working for what is today WLTX as an account executive, which was a pretty good job for a junior, and had talked about my ability to produce media stuff. And he said, "Son, you go back and you fill in your preference card and you write this down." Well, I did. The captain at the ROTC unit called me and said, "What is this?" I said, "Well, that's a 1400. He said, "I know that, but you're putting 1105 down there. You're going to be on a destroyer." And I said, well, no, sir, I'd like this number to be on there. Where'd you get that? Who told you to do it? Well, it turns out this Admiral Madison, and turns out Admiral Madison was the chief of information for the Navy. The guy raised Cain. I left the thing like it was. They ended up shipping me to the best PR school in the world. It was Ensign Tomlin and all these generals and admirals from all the different services, and I had a great education.
So, and we'll get to where that fits into your career because it's part of your success as an entrepreneur and that learning and leadership, but also the communication media side. First beyond high school and getting into the world, your first entrepreneurial experience or startup?
Other than when I was in school.
Other than when you were 13?
After the Navy, president of a bank that I had gotten to know called me up and said, we're having this recession and I'd like you to do a workout. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, that's why I want you. You don't know any bad. You don't know anything about real estate. And so I said, well, I was going to form a company, didn't know what I was going to do. He said, I don't care what you call it, we need you because you're cheap and I trust you. And so they gave me a motel down on I-95, rented 7 rooms that night. The sewer plant broke the next day. I was in it, fixing it, got eye infection, almost couldn't see for 2 weeks. Studied the billboard law, went out and built 14 billboards, made the thing look like a chain and turned it around. And so then they gave me another project and another project. The wonder of that is I learned how to unscramble eggs. I learned how to unscramble the eggs that weren't scrambled correctly, of projects that weren't funded, financed, operated, or managed correctly. And that was a wonderful way to learn what not to do as I began. And I did more and more of that.
And is that group, because it wasn't you, there were 7 rooms in the hotel. How did you go about, and that this would be your first major startup, selecting the folks that would march alongside of you as you started your first company?
There wasn't a lot of selection. I had to take what I could get. We used to lose the busboy regularly. I said, where does he go? Well, he goes in the kitchen. Why does he go in the kitchen? He be's reading to the cook. The cook can't read. I said, oh, Lord, have mercy. We have more problems than I can believe. But these were wonderful folks, and you deal with the deck that you're there. You try to motivate. Hiring was very difficult. You motivate and make the best of what you got, and do as much as you can yourself.
And that moving through that first company, what was the outcome of the company at what point? Was there exit?
There were a couple of projects that were too sick to fix, so they told me I had to buy them to get them off their books. That was when it was still legal. They loaned me the money to buy a couple of projects, and then all of a sudden I owed a few $1 million, and I really had to go to work. And I was able to build some net worth by turning some really bad stuff into good stuff. Part of that concept involved taking some tiny dormitory rooms of 260 square feet and redefining what a resort condominium is and selling them for $19,000 a piece. I had to go get mortgage insurance. No one had ever loaned on blenders and toasters and towels and linens, and so we had to kind of invent that in the resort lending arena. And so I managed to do that and make money off that, and went on to do 6,000 of those self-contained small resort-oriented condominiums at about 110 or 20 million a year.
That being said, were there a couple challenges along the way that you took with you after you finished and exited that business that you learned from to take to your next business?
Well, some of the challenges in that business were the savings and loans all of a sudden didn't have any money, called disintermediation. I won't dwell on that, but they ran out of money, so I had to find a place for mortgages for the folks that bought resort properties from us. So I heard about Bank of America had done what's called a pass-through mortgage-backed bond. And in this is the late 70s, I found out who did it, what lawyers, what accountants, and what investment banker sold the bonds. And I flew to New York and told them that I had structured one, and would they like to handle it? Well, I had no idea what the investment banker did, and told them who my lawyer was and all this. And they said that was such an incredible pitch, they took me. And we did the first mortgage-backed security ever done in the country, collateralized by multifamily units. And that was not easy. I had to help learn about and invent forms of pool insurance and get it rated through the rating agency. So I learned high finance very quickly through force majeure because I had to.
But it sounds like through the whole, you started out going through walls. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to drive through walls and get through things. Your first experience after college, you hit more walls and you just kept going through them or around them.
We hit lots of walls, Bill. We hit 14% on the 30-year bond. We hit 20% on the interest rates in 1980. We were able to drive through that. It wasn't easy. And we were able to, as we built that business, recruit and bring some extraordinarily talented people to Columbia. I'm still meeting alumni from that business who were brought here. It's a great place to move people. The cost of living is great. 2 hours from the beach, 2 hours from the mountains, and a wonderful quality of life and certainly adequate cultural resources. So the recruiting that we did over those years of building companies was really aided by being here in Columbia.
So move past that, and now we'll go back to your media experience and transition into your media company. Take us through that, how it started and where you went from there.
Because I started out unscrambling eggs, and because I understood how to recognize something that was in trouble and broken, when tax reform happened in 1986, I said, uh-oh, I better get out of real estate. This is going to be ugly. And so I started selling. It was not pretty. It was a loss. And by 89, I didn't own much at all in real estate. Still had a little bit of net worth left. Had to use a lot of that net worth to get repositioned out of that. Bought a chain of radio stations. I thought that that's marketing, it's finance, and that's what I had done. Marketing and finance had sort of been a theme to that date, and started in media in '89.
And as that progressed in '89, was it the same model of distressed or workouts, or was there's a whole different model there? Can you take us through it?
The radio stations, it was tough. One of them was so bad, the way I got it sold was to shut it. And no one ever flicks a switch and turns one of those suckers off. And if you have the switch on and it's still operating, you're operating at a big negative, and bankers won't finance it, and buyers are scared of it. If you turn it off, you've got a license, you've got a tower, you've got assets, you don't have any negative loss other than some property taxes. So the whole equation of selling it was changed. Again, I learned a lot back when I was unscrambling those eggs. So we were able to reposition. We bought that chain to dispose of it, and we were able to build some value there. And then one of the bankers asked us to do television. That's marketing and selling, and I'd worked in television sales when I was in college during the year. So I could talk the language and understood it, and suggested to the bank that if I sold it more than their basis, I should make a lot of money. and they didn't disagree. And so we started in doing workouts again in the media, and then had an opportunity to put a credit together to buy a bigger media company, and ended up selling that in '97. And I owned 50% of that at that time. And we sold that. We had 124 newspapers and 10 television stations and 22 radio stations. The way we made value in that is we sold the radio stations one at a time. Anyone else would have sold them as a group. But I had always believed if there are two ways to do things, and one is less convenient to you, and one is more convenient, you probably ought to do the one that's less convenient, because you'll probably come out ahead. So we sold those suckers one at a time, 22 books, 22 packages, 22 marketing efforts. And as a result, we made a huge amount on the radio stations. And then we were able to sell the TVs and the newspapers at the top of the market.
And after that, with the exit there, moving up to today, most of your interests, if you can take us through your real estate, and then with that, because I know you're involved in multiple opportunities or multiple companies, how did you assess that opportunity as a entrepreneur, but also as that investor?
When we sold that. Sold the media in '97, we started focusing on city-sized real estate developments, just because it takes a lot of capital, and you don't want to put debt on a 2,000-acre tract of land, because that's not the way you scramble that egg. So we were able to use equity to do Park West in Charleston, which is 2,000 acres, with my younger brother. Lake Carolina in Columbia, which is right at 2,000 acres, and Airsley in Charlotte, which is the densest zone parcel in the two Carolinas, and it's at a quadrant of 485 in South Tryon, and it is a self-contained city.
Yes,
so focusing on those things brought in the media, because we did deals with the cable where we owned part of the media in the community. The financing, when we eventually financed it, and the marketing. So we focused on those things in the 2002 and 3 era. We met a fella who was the best operator of portrait studios in the country. He had opened 3,000 or 4,000 portrait studios in Walmarts and Kmart's, and he had sold his company, had a 2-year no-compete. At the end of the 2 years, we financed him to start up a modern digital version of a photo studio. We currently operate 190 of them across the country. They'll do about 130 plus million this year, and film about 5 million people. And that's a fun business. We understood the technology. It was marketing, it was selling, it was using electronics to be at the point of sale, supervising the salesman right in their eyes through electronics, because the selling is happening after the photo session on a big screen, and you can present packages of things. So it brought together electronics, marketing, and a great manager, and we have over 1,000 employees.
But the key there is you found a subject matter expert in that market.
Right.
And from that, using your past experiences, you brought that to the table with a good team of investors, you and your partner, and that was the key team that started what we now know as Portrait Innovations.
Well, we decided we didn't want him schlepping around trying to find capital, so my best friend, he is, I'm the lead shareholder, he's the second shareholder. That's the only shareholders we got other than management. So he's never had to go to an equity meeting in 10 years. So he's been able to focus on the business. And we basically understand selling, and we understand the processes. I think as investors, we've had we've had some good influence of helping to grow that business, and it's a fun business.
Is it safe to say that, I don't want to call it a guiding principle, but use your past experiences and your knowledge, you look at things you understand and the market around it, not just give money, but you think about how I can help. I'm not giving you $1 million to go run your company. I want to be actively involved.
Well, if you can't help, you might as well invest in a mutual fund.
Yep.
There's no reason to invest in something if you don't understand it, or can understand it, or get people to help you understand it. That doesn't mean you don't spend some time to get down into the technology. It's not exactly what Warren Buffett says. If you don't understand it, don't go near it. Go try to understand it. That's how the entrepreneurs of today are dealing with issues that are complicated issues of technology, and investors have to get in there with them and dig and understand with them what the technology issues are. So, but if you can't help, if you can't make a difference, that's not for you. You shouldn't go into that. And to be laissez-faire and to lay back and just put money in and not put help in, it's the mentoring that I think is the most important.
And can you speak to the mentors in your life?
None. I mean, I wish, back when I was doing resort second homes, nobody did that. Nobody knew how we financed. Nobody understood how we could pre-sell a project before it was built, but I learned you don't go build it first, you sell it first. Well, how do you sell air? Well, you get real good at it. You use videotape, you use radio, you use all the skills, including great graphics and great print material, and you really treat the purchaser like an adult, giving them full copy, long copy, great explanations of what the product is, and nobody understood that. The Sharper Image understood it, but they were selling a bone phone or relaxation something, or small products, but nobody used it with capital type products of detailed marketing. So there really weren't mentors. That's why I'm so keen on providing mentoring to companies at the incubator and to recruiting mentors to help. We just didn't have them.
And then learning from that, your mentors, you're helping young entrepreneurs or middle-aged entrepreneurs not make the mistakes.
They're all young.
Compared to us, yeah. But get through this process without maybe having the same issues or challenges, because they can rely on you and other mentors across the Midlands.
I don't know whether they'll get by without issues and challenges, but I know that we can sit down with folks, and I've kind of left my switch on. You can either leave it on all day, every day, or you can turn it off and go play baseball. Well, I don't play baseball. I leave my switch on. I am building my relational database all day, every day, with everything I read, every person I see, and what I see. And that's really important. You just, as an entrepreneur, it's your relational database in here that's going to make the difference. And you've got to focus on not shutting that switch off, that input switch that keeps input going into that relational database, because that's the thing that's going to save you. That's the thing that's going to make you.
With that, moving forward one step and looking at just the Columbia or the South Carolina as a state, are there opportunities right now that excite you, or sectors that you think are growing that excite you as an investor and an entrepreneur?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I think South Carolina is exciting. We're a small state. We have, our advantage is we can recruit people here, we can build people here, and there is good stock to build upon in terms of the schools, the education that people are getting. We have enjoyed for much more than a decade of using interns from the University of South Carolina. They have had walk in our shop and have immediate P&L responsibility for something. They're frequently shocked that they're doing something other than following somebody around, but that has been a great place to recruit people from, of trying them out, getting them in, seeing who can do what, and putting them into business.
If there's folks watching from all over the place, and you look at Columbia, South Carolina, the region with the University of South Carolina, our technology incubator, and they're thinking about coming here or thinking about joining a company here versus, say, California or New York, 2 or 3 really important things they should think about as they think about Columbia.
Just think about competition. There is no competition here. You have, relative to Boston, Route 128, relative to being in New York, for example, relative to being in Maryland, for example, relative to being in Atlanta, for example, you've got great people, good educated people, and the costs of building a business here, you're able to build it and still own all of it.
And access to capital. And access to capital.
And, access to capital. Capital flows.
Yep.
If what our issues here in Columbia is finding bankable deals, investable companies. It's not finding the money. We can pick up the phone and get all the venture capitalists you want to see here. It's a matter of the deal flow, the mentoring, and the building up of the companies so that they are worthy of equity investments from the big equity funds. And getting them here is not a problem.
So I would now invite, I don't know if it's a microphone or Ragav, questions from the, we're about 30 or 40 minutes into this, but questions from the audience for Mr. Tomlin? Jim Morris.
What do you see some of the future things that are out there that excite you or think that have tremendous possibility that you really haven't had much time or to dig into, but that you just sort of sense is our opportunities?
That's a great question. Just take a dean, the dean of education. Sit with him, and he says, Don, in the next 10 or 20 years, most of the exciting companies that you're going to ever see are going to come in the education field. It's a revolution. It's changing. It's going to electronic dimensions. And you start to think about that, and how exciting is that? I'd never thought to go forage around over in the department, in his department, and look for folks to bring into the incubator. We certainly are doing well in engineering and the Moore School, arts and sciences, but who would have thought to go look in education that there are professors there, students there that can see opportunities to marry the technological capabilities that we have here in Columbia with the education department. I think that's an example of just not even scratching the surface, and that's just one area out of the university.
Anyone else? Mr. Tomlin, you had defined entrepreneur as someone who doesn't see walls and just breaks down all barriers. Obviously, at some point when you're starting a business, you're going to run into certain obstacles that are too difficult for you to tackle by yourself. So, how do you make the distinction when you go about it on your own or seek help from other people who can really make a difference?
I think from the moment you start, you're always seeking help from other people. From the moment you start, you're networking. You're leaving that switch on, building your relational database and trying to couple it to other people's relational database. You're looking for other people who keep their switch on, who are loading their mind with random inputs that when they're organized in your relational database of your mind, that you can help come up with solutions. So from the day you start your business, you're building a network, you're finding the people that can help you in the future tear down that wall, get around that wall, or climb over that wall.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Just a question about your suggestions and insight on getting more women involved in entrepreneurship.
The ranks of corporate America at the board level will do anything to get women on boards. It's not that there's a bias against that. I think there is an incredible opportunity for that. I look upon the difference of this Southern boy going to New York to invent new forms of bonds. I felt like I had an advantage in that they didn't expect that I was smart because I sounded Southern. I think that to the extent that businessmen are prejudiced in any way, that can be an advantage because they don't expect that you can do what you can do. And you can take advantage of that situation in terms of breaking down a wall. So I would look at women in business as having significant problems, impediments in the good old boy network. But today, the thinking good old boys are out seeking hitters that can make things happen and are out seeking the next head of Google and will build that person and it is women get smarter earlier than men. I look at my boys and my girl. There's just no question about it. You guys are diligent and have great study skills and habits earlier than men. And I think that the world is your oyster. I see it as an opportunity. And I hope that your experience is along that line. Part of it's attitude. Just they understand that they need to have balance in the workforce, balance in the managerial ranks, and balance at the board level.
Next question.
Well, you've been instrumental in some of the public-private partnerships in our state, and particularly in this region, in starting up the accelerator program. What do you think the role is for government in supporting the ecosystem for startups in our state?
I think I like the word ombudsman has been used. I think that in terms of startup, regulatory officers ought to think that they're development officers and look for ways to say yes and not to say no. I believe that the role of government is facilitating and not funding. Not funding startups per se, but funding the ecosystem and the infrastructure to get those. The incubator that Bill runs is a good example. where way more than half the money that's gone into that incubator is provided by the companies and by private capital, and a minority portion is provided by the counties and the city and businesses to enable there to be a place with services, color copiers, mentors, electronic conference room, and an affordable rent. But it's not about the building, it's not about the rent, it's about the mentoring, and it's about creating a critical mass of businesses that support themselves and mentor themselves. So the role of government is enabling and in all forms, in terms of having regulators believe that regulation is an opportunity to approve and not deny, and that's something that we need to inculcate throughout all of our local government and state government.
Hi, my name's Charles Pendarvis. I just finished with an exchange in Hong Kong. I have experience working in a couple of different educational social enterprises, and so I'm really interested in what you had to say as far as education here in South Carolina, what kind of problems there might be, and as far as opportunities, because I myself am also interested in working in this sector.
Great, let's go meet Lem Watson. You and I'll go. He's the Dean of Education, and we'll go. We have a program that I suggested to Bill a couple of years ago of invading the ivy. To let's go get inside that ivy and plow around and look for businesses that need to be created and brought out of the ivy into an incubation situation. And let's go plow around in his shop and talk. If you've got expertise in that area, let's just pair you up with whatever we can find in his shop and get it out of there and get it into incubation. Glad to do that.
Thank you.
And he will expect you to.
Let's talk after the meeting. How about that? Thank you.
We can call him tonight.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Chester. I'm Chester from Hong Kong, and one of my dreams is to become an entrepreneur. But then I want to ask do you think there are any specific skills or knowledge that is needed beforehand, like before you start up a company? Do you have to be like a good marketer, or do you have to be like all-rounded or a good manager or something like that?
You leave your switch on, you read everything you can read, you absorb everything you can absorb. As you drive around, you analyze why it is, where it is, what it is. As you read, you analyze why they're writing that. You build your relational database, that's one, and you do it every day, all day, and you stay up a little later. You work half days, that's just a rule of mine. You know what a half day is? 12 hours. And then when you get older, you can go back, cut back to 8, and you feel like you're retired. But I think you don't need a specific, you need the will, a desire to be an entrepreneur, the will to be an entrepreneur. You need to be able to write. If you can't write, take a writing course. I mean, half our folks in this city can't write. I mean, writing a cogent, appealing, motivational something, not ad copy per se, but the input to the person who writes the ad copy. So there are a few things like that. We'd be delighted to get you to visit the incubator and sit down and sit one-on-one and talk through how do you become an entrepreneur. I think you build network, you search for ideas, and you go with this other gentleman when he goes over to see Lem Watson and you call around and act like you're an entrepreneur, and we'll find some professor over there that's got some great idea and has no clue what to do with it.
I'd actually add to that is coming to meetings like this and our series at night and hanging out in the incubator. There's two folks here, Sue and Jim, that do business in China, in Hong Kong around dementia. I mean, they've got a whole network across China. You could be and they're faculty, but they're also entrepreneurs. They could, you could bring unbelievable expertise because you're from there. And I'm assuming you speak the language and all that, assumption. But there's a lot, by coming to a place like that, you just met Sue and Jim, who could, right here, they're up here. She's up,
Right here.
don't get her to stand up, but she'll want to talk and talk to everybody. But I mean, you just matched up. That's why you should come. When Don says, I know this is Don speaking, but when Don says, be at events, learn, always look for opportunities, my brain works that way. And by coming here, you should not miss one of these events. And this is a working example for both of you, Lynn Watson and Jim and Sue. It's a good example. So you just had a lesson. Sorry about that.
Did you have another question?
It's okay.
You won't ask another.
I just want to ask, like, but when do you know it's the right time to start a business? When you know you are ready?
When you're bored doing anything else.
That's good. That's good.
Or when you can't, it's kind of like falling in love. If all you can do is think about the girl or the guy, if all you can do is think about them all day, you better go get married to them. And entrepreneurship is like that. When you're dreaming about it, can't sleep, thinking about it, your stomach's agonizing over it, you better go do it because your quality of life will improve even though your tension level will go up. Yes, sir.
Mr. Tomlin, first of all, thank you. This has been very enlightening. My question is, you mentioned your relational database, leaving the switch on. For you personally, how important has trend spotting, being able to spot trends in the market, in the world, how important has timing been in your decision making? And have you found yourself in a situation where you have fallen in love with an idea, but you're swimming upstream and you have to give up on it?
Well, I rode on a train in Manhattan in the 70s, and it was in the morning. And I'm sitting there looking out the window. I look around the train. Everyone else is in there, like the most serious look you've ever seen, tearing through every page of the Wall Street Journal. And we don't have trains down here. So I said, oh God, people up there are smarter than we are because they're getting continuing education 40 minutes every morning. And we don't get that. We got to drive. So hopefully will tell you that I started out afraid that I didn't know. So I really tried to load that relational database, and it once it's loaded, you can get signals in here that it's time or that this is a trend. And there's some wonderful books that are out there that I can suggest to you about trend spotting and tipping points and stuff. And it really is voracious reading with understanding, and it's questioning, and it's talking, and it's asking questions, and trend spotting is important. And all I can tell you is if you religiously work on loading your relational database with the most extraneous stuff that you can load, with no limitations on what you're interested in, and somehow you just assimilate it all. You don't have to be a genius to do this. I'm not. You will be able to sense and spot trends, and you can test them. Marketing needs to precede risk-taking. I learned that when I was unscrambling eggs. So when I did resort condominiums, we sold the suckers first. No one had ever done that. We sold all of them first, not 20% or 10%. And then we got the persons qualified for their loan before we ever built the thing. And that was a pretty darn important when recessions came through. And we had a lot of them in my career. So I think you'll be able to do trend spotting if you work on building your database right.
Thank you.
You've mentioned unscrambling eggs a couple times.
Yes, sir.
What are your first steps when you go into a place and you think, I got to unscramble an egg? What are the first two places your mind goes to? Have you got down to
What-
one or two starters?
No, because all the scrambled eggs are very different. But I think the basic precepts are what is the marketing premise here? What is it that they're trying to sell? And what is it that the market wants? And are those aligned? Is there any alignment in their product, how it's presented, how it's delivered, how it's configured with the market's wants, needs, desires? How do you determine what the market wants, needs, and desires? We just got through discussing that. One of the books I want to write is You're the Expert, or said another way, Up the Expert. You, as an entrepreneur, can't hire someone to make your decisions for you. If you go to a lawyer, you don't ask the lawyer to make the decision, you ask him to advise you, and you make the decision. If you go to a doctor, you don't just listen to the doctor say, you need this. These guys are way more educated than I am on this. You go and listen to his advice, and you may get a second piece of advice, and then you make the decision. You have to make the decisions, and you have to analyze what's wrong with input from others, and you can't just continue what was there. You have to stop, zero out every decision that person made, and look at the core assets that are sitting there, and how do you align those assets with a viable market that can be delivered to. In startups, test market. Go try to sell the sucker, even if it doesn't exist. Tell them it's vaporware, but try to get an order. You will find more about what the market wants by getting out, trying to make sales, kicking the doors open, and refine your product. You're not going out and sell vaporware and promise delivery immediately. Where's AJ? Is he still in here? That's why he left. I knew I was going to talk about vaporware when I went on his first meetings with him. But he delivered. He delivered. But he was he knew this before I knew this. So I think to unscramble that egg, it's really analytical, and don't listen to advisors if they're trying to make decisions for you as you analyze what that thing is. You'd make the decision. You're the expert. Properly informed, after question, after consideration, you got to be the expert that makes a decision. You can't have others make it for you. You can't rely on earlier decisions that the entrepreneur who scrambled that egg made. Yes, sir.
Tomlin, I was just curious, if you were to be starting an information-based, technology-based business today in today's market, what, in order of importance, what media would you use to start advertising, marketing your products?
We just cut $4 million out of our advertising at Portrait Innovations this year. No effect. Revamped it. Focused it on electronic media solely. There's a revolution going on right now in multiple industries, depending on what kind of information technology that you were marketing. Using the everything from the old page ranking to Facebook to there's certain things you can use Facebook for. There's certain things you can use Google page ranking expenses to get your page rank up. There's so much out there in the electronic and viral marketing. I think if you position yourself for viral success, what can you create a buzz about, and what can you create legs to where others talk about your product? If you spend time thinking about how you can create a rapidly spread viral product, a virus, that where people are going to be talking about it, have to talk about it, want to talk about it, and you facilitate their conversation about it. And you do that as part of your product design, your marketing is not only easier, it is way more cost efficient. So it really goes into the concept of the business and plan for a virus.
Prior to the viral marketing, because obviously you don't want something to go viral if it's not a great product yet. So in between, starting your business and going for viral marketing, what media would you use for your test marketing?
For your test market, you designed the thing to go viral from scratch, and you go call somebody on the phone and convince them to buy it, hand them a Yelp iPad that's already on Yelp, ask them to put their password in and report on it on Yelp, and you start right from that basis to build your communications package that would self-sustain, I believe. It goes into, when you conceive of what you're going to do, you better conceive it to be able to be marketed. You better conceive it to be able to be marketed cost efficiently. You better conceive it to be durable and to have multiple faces, fresh faces that can be marketed and will market themselves to some degree. Yes, sir.
Mr. Tomlin, in your very varied and long history and career, has there ever been an egg that you couldn't unscramble?
Well, absolutely. I just have to take me a
forget
minute
those, right?
Yeah, yes. Right now we're contemplating where newspapers fit in the community newspaper and how blogs and newspapers fit. And I'm having a hard time unscrambling what the future of newspapers are or is right at this time as an assignment from a friend that's asked me to focus on that for him.
Book suggestions. What should we move to the top of our list?
Say that again, please.
Book suggestions. What should we move to the top of our reading list?
I think things like the normal stuff, like the tipping point. I believe that I wouldn't characterize. I think what I would do is look at the best business books list of the New York Times, go into the archives, go back 10 years, read them all. Just get all of them. If they're in the top 5, read them. I think by characterizing a book or other books, you limit it. What I'm telling you is I read some wild and crazy different things because it helps to load my relational database. And I read things about marketing. I read things about health. I read things about psychology. I read things about applied psychology, visual graphics. Lord, I think it's a matter of just loading all you can load. And I wouldn't dare pick one because hear what I'm saying. I'm talking about a whole lot of loading of a database. Remember those cats on that train in New York, 40 minutes every morning? Those suckers are getting ahead of you. So you've got to read a lot to keep up with all those folks in Boston and New York that are commuting. And that's something we should all do and commit ourselves.
And I can comment on that because we've looked at a lot of things together. And there's not one deal that Don usually comes and says, Bill, you look at this, that I go back a week later and he has looked at every book, everything you can possibly find. I don't know why he asked me, it's from my gut on how I might run the company, but I have not been, I don't know how many deals we've looked at, Don. Well, but he's always, but he is such a quick learn to get whatever he can to find out about that company to where I'll say, Don, we're going to see this company about X. Can you see them in 2 days? Absolutely. In a 2-day span, I'll walk in with that company, and he'll know more about their market and their technology than the entrepreneur to say, and there's a lot of reasons why. Number one, you think about investing, you want to know everything, but also you want to make sure the entrepreneur knows, hey, I've studied this. You're not wasting your time. I've studied it. Now let's have an intelligent conversation. With my little company that I went to, he laid out in 45 seconds, and I've said this 1,000 times. We joke around with our wives about it. 45 seconds, he said, stop. I said, no. Like a 5-minute presentation. I was excited about it. So he said,
I heard his feelings terrible. I told him.
He did. I was feeling pretty smart about this.
I got it.
I was feeling real smart about conceptual search, and thank God he didn't ask me for the big words. But Steve Light was there, so I was okay. Steve had me covered. But in 45 seconds, he said, I got it. I've looked at it. Here's what you're doing. This is cool. And that started a relationship that's lasted.
It's easy to research today with the electronic world that we're in.
Absolutely.
If you get your database loaded to a certain level, you can read between the lines. That's really important. What is it they're not saying? Why are they saying it this way? Well, how are they saying that? Is this credible? Is this not credible? And then you can blow on to the next one, and you can dive deep quick. And part of that is I've got a few years on a lot of y'all, and so I've been doing this for a while of loading that database. But we also have some 24-year-olds at the incubator. They're right up with me.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that long. It's not years. They've loaded theirs. You can talk to them about finance. Yes, sir.
I noticed that you liquidated your newspapers in '97, you said.
Yes.
Was there something that indicated to you that you needed to get out of that business, that you kind of saw the writing on the wall?
We were able to achieve, no.
So that was just fortunate timing?
Well, we knew that there's a risk in holding assets, operating assets. There's also a reward from holding them. We had positioned that business, and we had a company that bid against us to try to buy that business that wanted it very bad when we bought it. And we sold the radio stations for a big, big number. They didn't care about that. So they were basically happy to get it at what we paid for it, but we'd sold $200 million worth of radio stations. And they weren't focused on that. And they didn't do very well. And I think Warren Buffett owns them today. So it wasn't a great sense of timing. There was an equation. The holding risk, what can go wrong during the holding period? Do we have a buyer today that is less than rational, has some analytical impediments and emotional reasons they wanted to buy it? And you put all those together, and one of the things that wasn't on the list was the glory in being the owner of that business. We tried to cut the emotion out of it, and we had transformed that business quickly through negotiations with CBS and other entities where we were able to front-end cash flow over the next 5 years, saying, I don't care what you pay me in the second 5, I want it all in the first 5 on a 10-year contract. And there are folks that just don't focus on that when you're selling stuff, if they're the right buyer. So it was opportunistic positioning, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for being here.